Welcome to the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast with psychologist Dr. Doreen Downing. Listen in as Doreen interviews people who felt they didn't have a voice or who suffered extreme speaking anxiety. You'll hear stories about how they struggled to speak up, what they did to find their authentic voice, and the confidence they now feel to speak up and make an impact. If you want to get started right away to find your voice, download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. And now, here is Doreen.
Hi, this is Dr. Doreen Downing. What a pleasure it is to be hosting the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast, especially when I get to bring to you people that I know really well, that I've worked with, and that I deeply admire. And today that is Eric Atwood. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Doreen. Pleasure to be here today.
Yeah. Well, because we've been on a path together, a journey together, this is going to be, I think, something that the audience will get to have more insight into because both of us understand what this is all about, meaning finding your voice, your authentic self, and being able to speak with full presence anytime, anywhere.
Absolutely.
That's our promise today, folks. Let me read what Eric's given me to represent his bio. Eric Atwood is a speech and presentation coach, communication skills trainer, copywriter, author, and certified speaking circles facilitator, and founder CEO of the Speakers Studio. And he has a passion for language and communication, both spoken and written, and is committed to helping people express themselves clearly, confidently, and authentically in all their interactions. And currently residing in the San Francisco Bay Area, Eric has lived in 7 countries and traveled to more than 50, bringing a deep understanding and appreciation of people and cultures to his work and his life. And he's also the author of the book, New Thinking, New Being, moving from the daily grind to a more meaningful, deeply fulfilling life. I like reading that and bringing your expertise to the group today. So right now, just before we get going, I see that Eric's note taker AI has entered. Maybe we just let it go. Yeah.
Yeah, or you can decline it if you have that option.
Okay, I did.
Okay.
We want it all for the audience, not for your note taker.
Right.
So Eric, just so much I could start with just from what you provided in terms of a bio. I've said that I like to start in early childhood, and that's usually true, but 50 countries and lived in 7. I can't help but start right there because that is so fascinating. I was in the Peace Corps, so I have deep appreciation for other cultures and living in it. Um, could you just name the 7 countries? Let's just say that.
Sure. So I was born in Malaysia, and then my family moved to India, and then Honduras, and then Colombia, and then Afghanistan, then back to India, and then I moved to the States. So I didn't live in the States till I went to college.
Oh,
And then about 15 years after living in the States, my wife and I moved to New Zealand, and now I'm back in the US. And so how I came to be living overseas was my dad was the country director of the organization called CARE, which provides relief, aid and supplies to developing countries around the world. So we moved from country to country. We always lived in the capital cities of these countries, and I always went to American schools with kids from literally all over the world. So it was a very interesting upbringing. And right from the get-go, it sort of opened up my worldview. It's sort of an atypical American kid upbringing, if you will.
absolutely. And uh, I mentioned Peace Corps, and I was in the Peace Corps Malaysia, right where you were.
Oh, really? I was
What?
born in Kuala Lumpur.
Yes, KL.
Yeah,
What year were you born?
1966.
66. All right. Well, you might have been a baby crawling around when I was when I was a Peace Corps volunteer there.
Yeah.
But wonderful. Yeah, I'm sure you probably didn't have many memories. You probably didn't live there that long.
No, and I have never returned there, but my sister has. She was also born in Malaysia and she works for the State Department. She's been to 180 something countries, so she puts me to shame. But she's returned to Malaysia a couple of times.
Uh-huh. Well, given that we've said it's atypical, and we might as well then go into, so what was the family structure that made you feel like you didn't have a voice? Or maybe it was positive, I don't know. So give us some insights on what it was like being a little kid in that family.
Yeah, so I was one of three children. I was the middle child, and I was my mom's favorite. She called me the apple of her eye, and I was sort of a different child in her eyes than my brother and sister. My brother was older, my sister was younger, and so I felt like the sort of special child, and I had to be the good boy, and I had to, really not speak up or speak out against anybody. I was sort of the family pacifier, if you will. And so I didn't feel like I had much of a voice as a child. And there were a couple times, I don't want to get into too much mother stuff here, but a couple times where I disappointed my mom and she really let me have it. Not like physically, but emotionally, and made me feel bad. I was like, oh, I can't disappoint my mom anymore. So I got even more quiet and just more of a doting child. And so that didn't just parlay into my childhood, but into my early adulthood. And for many years afterwards, I felt like I was just kind of that pacifier kind of person, and I couldn't really speak up. So I didn't really have much of a voice. Um, and beyond that, I didn't really like myself much. I didn't feel like I had a lot to offer. And there were a couple of instances in my childhood where I felt like I was being judged and people didn't like me. And so that also made me withdraw from people. And so some of these instances and my family dynamics made me feel like I didn't have much of a voice and I didn't have much to offer. And
Uh-huh.
so, I was sort of just constrained and didn't speak up at all, whether I was in my family or friends or school or whatever. So that was kind of my experience as a child.
Well, it's interesting that you hear a lot about children of the military who have to go to new environments, new schools, and that there's the positive side where they adapt quickly, but the other side is that it's always a struggle to be seen and heard because it's a whole new environment, a whole new there are new customs and new norms, new social situations, and to find your way into. And I was just wondering, even though it wasn't military, was it because you moved so many? Was there something like that also going on for you?
Yeah, yeah, I think that definitely had something to do with it. Moving from country to country every 2 to 3 to 4 years, we'd go into a new school, had new friends, and of course, new country was different culture, different sort of experience, different language, all those things.
Mhm,
So I did feel like I never was as settled anywhere.
mhm,
And I felt like maybe that made me a little bit more withdrawn or not able to sort of express who I was because I really didn't know at that. It wasn't like I felt like lost. It was just like more of a nomadic experience moving from place to place and never feeling like anywhere was home for me. Yeah, might have had something to do in terms of how I showed up in the world and maybe how I didn't. So, yeah, yeah. So haven't thought too much about that particular thing in terms of why I didn't speak. I think it was more my shyness and self-consciousness, and again, a couple of things that happened to me when I was young that made me feel like I didn't have much to say and I didn't want to be judged by people. I think that was a big part of it too. I didn't speak because I was afraid people wouldn't like me.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, uh, it sounds like there are two places I can go. Because you just mentioned something that happened, that always makes me curious. Like you sound like you have a memory about what it happened where you kind of made a decision that people didn't like you. So why don't we go there? What was that? Were you referring back to a memory?
Yeah, there was one in particular, and throughout school, my early education, I didn't really raise my hand in class, and if I was called on, it would be a very brief answer. And there was one time I was 10 or 11 years old. I remember it was in sixth grade in the American International School of Kabul, Afghanistan, um, where the school was holding an event, and my sixth grade teacher decided like I would be a good candidate for this particular event. And what he asked five of his students to do was stand up on a stage in front of the entire school and tell a story. And the idea for that story, or the theme for that story, was given to the person just before they got on stage.
Uh-huh.
Now, I was a very shy kid, and my teacher knew this, but he also knew me to be a creative person, the way I wrote stories. I love to write. I
Oh,
love the written language, so I'd write stories, and sometimes he would share my stories in front of the class. So he knew me as a creative kid, but he also knew I was shy. So when he picked me to participate in this particular event, standing up in front of hundreds of people with a microphone on stage as a shy kid and given the subject of a story to tell, you can imagine what my experience was like. Terrifying.
yeah, a little fright there. Yeah.
Oh, more than a little. It was pure terror. I
Uh,
mean, I literally looked down the whole time at my feet and mumbled something. I don't even know what. I was supposed to tell a story about this thing that was given to me. And so from that moment on, I defined myself as this shy, scared, stupid kid.
oh,
Yeah, because I didn't tell a story really. It was just mumbling stuff, looking down at my feet. And I just felt like everybody was judging me as this shy, scared, stupid kid. So that's how I defined myself. And that really went for the next 30 years. That is really how I saw myself. So I wouldn't ever put myself in that position again. And I didn't just not do public speaking, but I withdrew from everybody because of that label I had put on myself. So that was one of the momentous moments of my life where it was such a public speaking terrible incident that I couldn't do that again, but it also changed how I saw myself and prevented me really from interacting with people. So it made me shut down even more than I already was. So it wasn't until my early 40s where things started to shift. So that's a long time to feel that way about myself. And, so I don't regret it because it eventually led me to where I am today. And if somebody had told me 20 years ago I'd be doing what I'm doing now, I'd say, no way I would be doing that. That's the last career path I would want to follow, given who I was at that time.
uh-huh.
So, in a way, it was good for me. That challenge and overcoming it, made me the kind of person and do the kind of work that I do today.
Well, the message I just heard you give folks out there listening is that no matter what the trauma is, there is a possibility to face it, work through it, and become what more of the kind of person that's possible for you, the potential that is still within.
Hmm.
I was curious. I mean, what also for listeners, what you kept saying is that you're the one who identified yourself as that. I wasn't sure if other people around you came up to you afterwards and said, "Hey, dumb, stupid, whatever you called yourself." Did anybody, did you, or was this just a self-perception and a decision you made?
Yeah, I would say it was exclusively that. It was a self-inflicted definition, and it was self-inflicted pain that I was putting myself through for 30 years after that. So yeah, that's a great question because I don't remember anybody ever saying something like that. And of course, most people wouldn't say that even if they felt that. But it was me. It was just a self-perception of how I saw myself and um, even
That's
though
rough.
that's how I felt like that was the truth. It really wasn't because I had a lot to say, I had a lot to share, and eventually I got to the place where I started liking myself instead of really hating myself. and that was part of it, that projection.
Ah,
Not liking myself and feeling like other people aren't going to like me if I don't like myself. So
uh-huh.
that's why I shut down. Yeah, so
Uh-huh. Just, I get it. I get the sense of these prison bars coming down that you're the one who's trapping yourself in your own cage there and
yeah.
making that definition. Well, so the other direction I was going to go, but thank you for telling that story. And it does feel like it might resonate with a lot of people out there who have had moments. And a lot of people I work with, my clients, I've heard that very kind of story of fright. And not only, like you said, it wasn't just fright, it was terror.
It was, yeah.
But the other thought I had, and especially since you said earlier today with me that your mother saw you as the apple of her eye, and I saw what you said is that, well, that made you want to please and, to comply,
Hmm.
but it doesn't sound like it gave you a strong sense of yourself that you were okay, that you were lovable, or that you were confident, or, something about, even though she, one of the biggest influences in our lives, our parents, even though she went, yay, you, there was something that didn't sink into your psyche, into being confident as a young person.
No, I was just the opposite of that. Um, yeah, I feel like if I think about it, at depth, I feel like my mom was the only one who loved me.
Uh,
And it didn't feel like it was like unconditional type of love. I felt like I needed to be a good boy in order for her to love me. And
uh,
if I disappointed her, like I shared earlier, like she wasn't going to love me or she was going to criticize. And so I felt like that. I didn't really like myself because I wasn't really getting the right kind of love from my mom, and other people weren't really expressing, how much they liked me. And I don't know if I even needed that, but I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that for myself. I didn't feel that from other people. So I just felt like it wasn't really authentic love, if you will, from my mom. And
yeah,
so I didn't have that for myself. And I don't want to blame my mom for, my situation back then or how I felt about myself. She had something to do with it, but it was mostly like we just discussed. It was mostly my self-perception. And
uh-huh,
yeah, so I didn't feel like I was worthy. I feel like didn't feel like I was enough. That's obviously very common with people. And so that sort of manifested in me not talking with people and, not liking my life.
right.
So yeah.
Well, I'm going to move on in just a second, but I just had something that I thought was a somewhat of a connection with how we in general, you perhaps, but we in general as little kids learn to view ourselves the way the important people view us. So, in a way, if she was critical, there might have been, when you had your incident that you talked about, your episode, that you were self-critical, so self-critical that you were, because I had the sense that you would know that she was unhappy, so it was like she scolded you.
Yeah.
So in a way, you scolded yourself, and so I just felt I saw the connection between how we come to have confidence and who teaches
Mm.
us to be confident in ourselves. So just wanted to make that note for folks about
Yeah, yeah, that's a great observation. And one other thing I'll add quickly is the relationship I had with my dad. My mom was a very critical person. My dad was very distant.
uh-huh.
So I didn't feel that love from him either. Even
Okay.
though I admired the work he did working for CARE and, being a very humble and kind person, we didn't talk about anything other than sports.
Uh-huh.
So for 30 years, I didn't really know him. He didn't know me. And so I
Hmm.
didn't feel that love from my dad either. So didn't really have the right kind of love as a kid, even into my adulthood. It was very challenging. So I think that
Okay.
affected how I saw myself.
Thank you. And as long as you're saying, let's go into the adulthood, because here you
Yeah.
are, such a bright, brilliant, confident man who is working with others who suffer from speaking anxiety and helping them be more expressed, not just on a stage, but anywhere in life, which is
Mhm.
stage anyway. So what happened? What was the waking up?
Yeah, so soon after I turned 40, my wife and I were living in New Zealand, and I realized I was still very unhappy, even though we were living in a beautiful place and, we were doing work that we very much enjoyed. She had her own business. I had my own consulting business. I still was unhappy, and I couldn't figure out why that was. And so I started researching some personal development courses and workshops, and I found this organization called Landmark, which a lot of people, your listeners, may be familiar with. And I kind of looked at it as, you know what, I think this would be useful for me. So the Landmark Forum is a weekend workshop that really helps you get honest with yourself. And it can be very intense and challenging, but it's exactly what I needed because I realized into my early 40s, I wasn't happy. There was something missing. And so I decided I'm going to take this workshop. And 2 hours into the workshop, I realized this is exactly what I need. I need somebody to wake me up, you know, instead of thinking, my life is hopeless and there's nothing more for me here. I can do something about this. And so the first couple of days was really eye-opening and heart-opening. And towards the end of the second day of that workshop, I felt called to actually step up in front of the entire group of like 150 participants and share my story. And
Mhm.
it had been 30 years since I did anything like that. Because the first time, 30 years ago, was, as I described, terrifying. But I was pulled up to the stage and felt like I need to talk about what's happening, like what I'm feeling right now, kind of the shifts I'm feeling in myself. And I went up there without worrying about what people thought of me, really spoke from my heart for like 3 or 4 minutes, and wow, I felt like I was transformed in that few minutes.
Oh,
And at the break, several people came up to me and say how touched they were, how inspired they were. And it's like, wow, I just discovered something about myself. I have something to share. I can actually serve through my words. I can feel fully alive, like in front of a group for the first time. So literally in just a matter of minutes, I felt like I overcame public speaking phobia. It was that transformative. And so from that moment on, for not just that moment, but like for several years afterwards, I started doing things differently. I started seeing myself differently. I started opening up to people I'd never met before. I started reaching out to people who I hadn't talked to, like relatives, friends for the longest time and sharing from my heart. And I had completely changed my relationship with my dad. The one thing that I kind of look back on, and he's been dead for 12 years or so, is that I was able to open up a whole new relationship with my dad. So the last 5 years of his life, we were very close and we talked about everything. We shared stories and expressed love for each other. And oh my God, was that a big, big thing in my life. And so Landmark and then speaking circles and then men's work and other things that I was doing, reading self-help books, 5 years of like intense self-introspection and personal development really changed my life. And I wrote a book about it. And so that was the beginning of my new journey, if you will, to waking up and finding my true self and eventually doing the work that I'm doing now.
oh, this is so touching and so real because I do know you and I do know the powerful person you are. And to hear the more of the details and connect what happened for you and then hear about that breakthrough moment. And in that breakthrough moment, I heard you say you opened your heart, you opened your mind. So listeners, I think those are two nuggets you can take with you is the thinking, the mindset that you have needs to be opened up, and also your heart, the way in which you open up to what risk and willingness to expose yourself. And I'm going to take a break real quick here because I want to get back and talk about what you're currently doing and how all of this is leading to how you help people today. So we'll be back in just a sec.
Okay.
If you want to get started right away to find your voice, download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com.
Hi, we're back with Eric Atwood, my friend and colleague who now helps people become more authentic when they express themselves. And that's anywhere in life, whether it's a stage, a meeting, personal relationships, and love. So let's continue our journey today. If you're only tuning in now, please go back because Eric's story has already been one that I think is very relatable about how you get trapped in your own self-perception, your own definition, your own identity, perhaps that you have created that is negative of yourself, and how do you break through that? And Eric told a story about how he did. So go back and listen to it. And we're going to continue now. Ah, big breath, Eric. Ooh, yeah, big breath. Where you could pick up any of the thread because we're moving forward and into what you're currently doing and how you found yourself being somebody whose whose gift is now what you offer others.
Mm. Yeah, and one thread I'd like to pick up briefly is the speaking from the heart piece, because I think that is where we connect at the deepest level as human beings when we really tap into our heart space and are in communication with each other from that space. So speaking from the heart means really sharing who you are, sharing your story or sharing a challenge, being vulnerable or a feeling that you have, something authentic, something that's about you, how you think, how you feel about things, because that's where we are the most real. Rather than from our head or trying to impress people or wondering what people think of us, we get in our head a lot. Just dropping in and speaking from that place, so important. It's who we truly are. And
Okay,
so
dropping in. You just used
dropping
the
in.
phrase. What is, say just a little bit more about what dropping means so that people can actually maybe do it right here, right now. What does dropping in mean and how?
Yeah. So the way I see it is like almost literally moving out of your head and into your heart. So the thinking mind is where we typically operate and communicate from in most places is we're trying to be share our knowledge or our experience or something that we think and meeting people at that place too, and we listen from that place often too. And from the heart space, as I shared, it's more about the feeling. It's more about, the meaning of who we are and what we believe. And, that can be a story or that can be, what's meaningful to us, what matters to us. So belief and feeling, I think, is the more authentic part of ourselves. So literally going from that, and there's a saying I think I'm not sure what the teaching is, but the longest distance we'll travel as humans is from the head to the heart. It can be a long way to get. It's a huge gap for people. It's like they want to just be in their head, you know. But the heart space is really where things open up and get real and where we connect in a really beautiful and authentic space with each other. And so when we speak from that place, it brings us closer together. It makes us feel like we are not separate at all,
Ah, beautiful.
like we are just completely the same. So the heart is our authentic self, the way I see it, and it's where we connect at the deepest level. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about that because I feel like it's really important and I think where we need to show up more as human beings from that space.
Absolutely. So right now, listeners, just visualize energy that's in your head. Take a breath, and this idea that Eric's talking about dropping down, just think about energy going down, 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 down into your heart area. Maybe even put your hand over your heart so that there could, and there are many techniques that we can teach you about how to drop down into your heart so that words and expression comes from a more what we're talking about today, authentic, and the energy that connects. That we're that was Eric's breakthrough, opening up his heart years and years ago. So, Eric, what about today? What are you doing nowadays?
Yeah, so in 2007 was when I discovered speaking circles and participated in the same speaking circle in Auckland, New Zealand for about 4 years. And then the facilitator decided he was going to step away from for personal reasons, and there was nobody else in New Zealand doing speaking circles, so I decided to go through the certification training with you and Lee in 2011, and I became certified at the end of that year. And I decided soon after running my own circles in 2012 to start my own business based on my speaking circles training. So since 2012, I've run my own business called the Speaker Studio, using the practices that we teach in speaking circles, relational presence being obviously the foremost one. And I brought it into companies, into schools, and working with people one-on-one, working in groups, teaching these principles and helping people communicate more authentically, speaking from the heart, listening, using the practice of relational presence, being with one person at a time, just feeling the sense of community in these spaces. So I coach people, authors, teachers, speakers, coaches, and I do work in companies with teams, helping them communicate and collaborate more effectively, both in person and virtually. And I do a few other things too. I like to have a variety of things going on in my business and my life. So, copywriting being one of my joys as well. But for me, it's all about communicating authentically. How do you show up in one-on-one with people that you know or with people you meet for the first time, networking? How do you run meetings? How are you part of a team? How do you show up as yourself in a team? So yeah, so that's what I've been doing for the last 12, 13 years, running this business. And I'm always looking for opportunities and groups where I can serve. And for me, it's about helping people find their voice just as you do, really express fully who they are, serve, fulfill their purpose and whatever walk of life, whatever their work, their career path is, speaking about yourself and what matters to you, and in a way serving and being there for other people, being there with other people, is to me what we're all here for. And so in my small way, I help people do that. And I feel privileged to be running speaking circles and have people show up the way they do, and tell me like this work is life changing, and that we're all here to show up for each other. I think that's the meaning of life. So not to get too ethereal there, but yeah. So the work that I do is sort of an extension of who I found myself to be, and a lot of that is speaking my truth and speaking out fully and helping others do the same.
Uh-huh. Well, this, what you just said, who I found myself to be, I think has everything to do with speaking authentically. It is a journey to your authentic self so that you can find the voice. And I think that sometimes people think find your voice. Well, what does that really mean? Well, you have to find yourself, and guess what? There's your voice.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you
So it took
so
me a
much.
while to get to that place, but again, it's not about how long it takes, it's about getting there.
Yes.
And knowing that, now that I know who I am, and I know the work that I'm here to do, I can just keep finding those opportunities and keep being of service, because that to me is also what we're here for, making a difference in the world through our authentic selves and seeing the best in others and uplifting others.
Yeah. Who I am, what I'm meant to do, and that then it makes it clear about what your life is about. If you are online or if you're tracking that sense of self and finding yourself. So folks, today was all about this journey to your true self, your authentic self, how to do that. And you've heard a story today from Eric, who's had some challenges. And I'm sure all of you have had challenges at some point. And those challenges are part of what will make you even stronger if you're able to stop, go, whoa, let me look back, let me learn, as opposed to, oh, it's all in the past, it doesn't matter. Uh,
Hmm.
uh, Eric, we're coming to an end now, and I'd love to open up the space just for you to listen into this now moment, new now moment, and see how you want to close our conversation today.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for that invitation. And what's coming to me is something you just shared, is being in the moment. That's something I've also learned to do through my journey and through the practices that I engage in now, is really appreciating my life, appreciating my whole journey, including the challenges, and sometimes especially the challenges, because if we're able to overcome them and learn things from those challenges, we get that that's making us stronger. That's waking us up to something different, maybe waking us up to who we truly are and finding our purpose. And so I live from that place of deep gratitude for every day that I have, and every single thing that's happened to me, every opportunity ahead of me, all the relationships that I have, the work that I do, and seeing all the possibilities and what a miracle it is to be alive and to be the kind of people we are, having these opportunities to do great work in the world and feel good about ourselves and feel good about being alive. And so, again, I'm getting a little bit off a little bit on a tangent here, but for me, it's like being in the moment and loving our lives and living from a place of gratitude and service. That's that's enough for one life. And so that's how I feel today. And I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to speak with you.
And I'm grateful to have the opportunity to share you, yourself, your presence, your life, your story, your work with my audience. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Doreen.
Thank you for being with us today for this episode of Find Your Voice, Change Your Life. Each person Doreen interviews shares what has helped them find their voice. You can learn from these guests and find your voice so you can be confident to speak up and speak out. And remember to download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. We hope you enjoyed the show and will return next time. Until then, goodbye for now.